I had ChatGPT analyze the Federal Reserve and the nature of its corrupt intentions by using the prompt, explain the corrupt nature of the Federal Reserve in the format of a Dr. Seuss book. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I thought it was personally really hilarious. If you're not aware of the nature of the Federal Reserve and the lifeblood of the Leviathan that this operates as, it is what funds the endless wars of the United States. It is what funds the military-industrial complex. It is what consistently funds the black budget projects. It's what devalues your dollar through inflation, and so on and so forth. And what we're going to see is how this can be broken down so it can be distributed and read to your children so they can even understand the nature of evil that is the Federal Reserve. Once upon a time in a land far away, there was a bank called the Fed where the dollars would stay. It was run by some people with suits and slick hair, and they claimed they could control the economy with no need to beware. They said they'd print money to help us all out, but what they didn't tell us was what it was all about. For every printed dollar, the value would drop and the people would suffer while the Fed got on top. The interest rates would rise and the loans became dear, and the people would struggle year after year. The Fed claimed they were independent with no strings attached, but behind the scenes all the big bankers were attached. They'd bail out the big banks when they made all their mistakes, but let the little ones suffer with no give and take. The Fed was corrupt, and that much was clear, and the people needed to rise up and make it disappear. But it wasn't so easy, for the Fed had a grip on the politicians and media with their power and wit, so the people must educate and spread the word on the corrupt nature of the Federal Reserve and how it must be deterred. And so this tale ends with a warning to heed, to keep an eye on the Fed and its corrupt breed. When I first read this, I absolutely lost it. I was just laughing so hard. But man, who would have known that Dr. Seuss was an ANCAP? Certainly not me. Let's go on to the second one. This just absolutely cracks me up, because if you would have presented this to me, I'd be like, oh, who knew Dr. Seuss wrote this? In a land called America, so grand and so vast, there lived a creature known as the Federal Reserve, unsurpassed. It had great power, it controlled the money flow, and many believed it was the fairest way to go. But alas, there were those who saw its corrupt nature, and they knew that it needed a savior. Ron Paul. For the Fed, with its printing press and its control, was causing economic problems, taking its toll. The Fed was like a fox guarding the henhouse. It could print money out of thin air as quiet as a mouse, and with this power it could manipulate the market, creating bubbles and crashes. Oh, what a racket. Its policies favored the rich and powerful few, while the rest of the people were left feeling blue. Inflation, debt, and boom-bust cycles, the Fed's actions were like riding on ice cycles. So the people cried out, we need a change, for the Fed's corrupt nature was so very strange. They wanted transparency and a fair monetary system, one that wouldn't leave them in financial abyss or make them miss them. But the Fed refused to listen. It held on to its power, saying that it was essential, oh like a mighty tower. So the people continued to struggle and strive until one day they decided to take a dive. They learned about cryptocurrencies and how they could be free from the corrupt nature of the Federal Reserve, you see. They saw a future where money was decentralized and the power of the Fed finally downsized. So the moral of the story, my dear friend, is that the Fed's corrupt nature you can transcend by educating yourself and seeking a better way to break free from the Fed's power and make a brighter day. See, even ChatGPT knows that Bitcoin is the answer to escape CBDCs. Stunning. Alright, let's go into the third one. This is just cracking me up. I did a fourth one, which I haven't read. I just generated it a moment ago. Let's go ahead and get into the rest of these. Oh, let me tell you a tale of a place that prints money without fail. The Federal Reserve it's called, but its actions are often appalled. It started with good intentions, you see, to control inflation and make things easy. But over time it became corrupt, and its actions often disrupt. Its leaders, they play games, manipulating the money with aims. They print more and more each day, causing inflation to go astray. The value of the dollar declines while the Federal Reserve reclines. They enrich themselves with ease while the common folk are brought to their knees. The banks and big corporations benefit from the reserve machinations. While the average person struggles to survive, the Fed continues to connive. So my dear friend, it is plain to see the Federal Reserve is corrupt as can be. We need to hold them accountable or our economy will be unsustainable. Not the greatest rhyme to end that one off, but nonetheless absolutely true. I mean, we're $30 trillion in debt. The nostalgic noises in my mind of being in high school and only being $19 trillion in debt. The fact that China's just owing us our debt and just lending it to us back, and they're like, yeah, I mean, they just made Avengers Infinity War. Certainly they're good for another $10 trillion in debt. In a land called the USA, there was a bank called the Fed. It's controlled all of the money, and this is what I have read. Now, some folks said, this ain't right. This Fed's a corrupt site. But the Fed said, don't worry, everything's just all right. But the more folks looked, the more they could see the Fed's corrupt nature and how it hurt you and me. The Fed printed money out of thin air, causing inflation, and that just isn't fair. The rich got richer while the poor stayed the same. The Fed's corrupt nature is really a big shame. They bailed out big banks when they messed up real bad, but when we needed help, they just left us all sad. So folks, beware of the Fed's corrupt way, and let's work together to fix it today. See? What a white pill. ChatGPT knows we need to fix the Federal Reserve. But I mean, the whole thing is like we would have to default on our debt. I mean, we're going to have to default on it eventually. What are we going to do? It's $30 trillion. I am in a minute amount of debt because I am paying off my car. And it feels like I am never going to pay that off. And I'm pretty close to paying it off. But it still feels like I am never going to get it done. How are we going to pay back $30 trillion? We don't make anything. We produce nothing. We produce resources that we buy from other people so we can then make bombs to go bomb the people we just got resources from. Phenomenal. Okay. Nonetheless, that's really all this was. There were only 3 of them originally, but I ended up producing a 4th, and I didn't mind it. It wasn't bad. Give this thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I really enjoyed this because, I mean, ChatGPT just cracks me up in all the ways you can use it and break stuff down. I was going through things like false anthropology, how Harambe is correlated to Donald Trump getting elected, NATO expansion and Russia's perspective on what NATO expansion means to them throughout the historical context of Russia's evolution as a state, and then as well as the Oklahoma City bombing suspect and how this was suspect itself as an action that was taken by the investigatory state. And that one is quite interesting. I might do something on that alone because today is April 19th. Terrence Hickey did not kill himself. If you're not aware of the Oklahoma City bombing, go do some reading about it. It's incredibly interesting. It's unbelievably scuffed. Just like the things that came prior, the things that was really ginning up the federal government prior to 9/11 was right-wing nationalist militia extremism. And it was something that was really being pushed and ginned up in the media. And the OKC bombing was the biggest terror event that had ever happened. And then we had the attack on the Twin Towers, which originally was the one that was in the basement, that if, I believe that the investigators were saying that if it had been like 10 feet to the left or to the right, I don't remember which way, it would have blown out the pillars and it would have dominoed the buildings, knocking down who knows how many buildings, killing 30, 40,000 people in a matter of minutes in Manhattan in the middle of the day. Go ahead, go read about stuff like the OKC bombing, because these are the things that the federal government was using to completely spearhead stuff like the creation of the Homeland Security. And it's absolutely abhorrent. Again, thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. I don't really have any sources to link in the description for this. It's just using ChatGPT. Be safe. Tell your family you love them. Peace.